I first met Wandia a couple of years ago through Colin Gale, who is the founder of ACA, the agency that manages Nasty C and Tyler globally. When I told Wandia I was coming to Nairobi, she was courteous enough to carve out time to have a conversation with me. Wandia is the co-founder of Vivo Activewear. She is also a former judge at KCB Lions Den. She holds a business administration degree from the University of Cape Town. In this episode, Wandia and I have a conversation about her transition from policy work to building a fashion empire. We dabble a little on a conversation about her childhood and how that has really impacted her discipline, the way that she approaches financial autonomy, and the way that she approaches being a business owner holistically. I'm really excited for you guys to hear this conversation because Wandia is a woman I admire so much, who I have been dying to speak to. Tune in and don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, as well as hit the notification bell so that you don't miss any of our videos. Hello, Agenda Women Tribe, and welcome to another episode of Working Smart and Living Well with myself, Nomdeni Mdaki. This is actually a new season. I'm so excited to actually have a new season and to be recording in Kenya. I'm really thrilled to be here. It wasn't like the plan, but I ended up here and I'm so excited to be talking to one of my favorite people, Wandia. Thank you so much for making time for me.
Welcome. In Kenya, we say karibu.
Karibu, is that the welcome in
It
Kenya?
means welcome.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Kenyan people are some of the nicest people I've ever met.
Aww.
It's my first time in Nairobi. Everyone is so courteous. Everyone is so accommodating. I'll tell you a story. Took an Uber from the airport and I asked them to take the new motorway.
Yes.
And so he says to me, "Do you have cash?" And I'm like, I don't have cash. And he says, "Okay, you have to pay. I'll go and get cash and then I'll pay." When he drops me off, he says to me, "Okay, can you send me the cash on M-Pesa?" I'm like, how do you trust that I'm going to send you that money? But it was just a reflection of, I guess, the energy of the country.
It is, and I think it's the energy you give off as well. You know, I don't know that they would have done that for anybody, but
really?
yeah.
Oh, that makes me feel so good. I just thought, okay, this is very interesting, and I will, of course, send him the money. I'm really thrilled to be chatting to you. I can't remember. We were talking about this yesterday at dinner when we actually met. And I think it definitely was 2015 in South Africa, and through Colin Gale. Yes. And I remember it was at Melrose Arcade Paul's, if I'm not mistaken.
I wouldn't know.
You wouldn't remember.
But
now.
it was at some restaurant, and there were a couple of other people as well.
That's
but then
amazing.
we met again in New York.
Yes, briefly we met in New York again, and
partied on a rooftop.
Yes, partied on the rooftop. I actually remember we went to a couple of different places that day. Oh, yes. I do remember the trip in New York.
I have a picture. I should dig it out.
Really?
Yeah.
Please, we have to share it.
Okay.
So much has happened since then. Your business has grown.
It has.
So much.
It has.
But before we get into the business stuff, I want to get a sense of your childhood, right? What is the fondest memory when you think about your childhood today?
Oh gosh. I have 3 brothers, and most of the time they did. I was never a tomboy, so most of the time they did things that I didn't enjoy. Like they were out playing football, climbing trees, tadpoles in the mud, stuff like that. But occasionally we'd play, funny games in the house, running around, chasing each other. So I have fond memories of just laughing and playing. We did a lot of board games. Every Christmas, the presents under the tree would be Monopoly or, whatever. And then we'd spend hours sort of playing games and stuff like that. Yeah. And
were you raised in Nairobi or were you raised somewhere else?
So I was born in Canada. My dad was a student and met my mother, who was a teacher in Montreal. So I was born there, but we moved back to Kenya when I was 6 months old. So I don't remember. But then my dad joined the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and he was posted to Washington, D.C. So I was there until the age of 7, and then came back to Kenya and did the rest of my schooling here. Yeah.
And how did life feel for young Wandia? You know, we always reflect on our childhood and we think about maybe specific memories, but I think a lot of times how we felt as children often impacts how we navigate the world as adults. When you think, and I'm always very curious about what the answer is to this question, because your mom has a different answer, of course, because she was experiencing something different. Your dad has a different answer. Your brothers could have different answers to the experience of how it felt to be in that home or to just be in the world, whether it was Nairobi or Washington or wherever the family was based at any given time. How, when you think about your childhood, what's the feeling that comes up for you?
To be honest, I don't remember the early years.
Yeah.
I think I blocked them out.
Yeah.
And not necessarily because anything terrible happened, but my mom was, while we were in DC, she had 5 young children.
Oh my gosh.
And in the space of, you know, I mean, my eldest brother was 1.5 years older than me, my younger brother 1.5 years younger, and then it was sort of a year. And then when she gave birth to my 5th brother, he was born very, very sick. And he survived about 2 years. But those were 2 years where she was in and out of hospital with him. So I think in those years, there must have been quite a bit of neglect and chaos, just because there was so much else going on.
Yeah.
So I have very little memory of that. But up until about the age of 12, I was a kind of goody two-shoes.
Yeah.
I was trying to be the good girl. I wanted the teachers to like me,
Yes.
and I wanted my parents to like me. And then I switched schools for high school, and I went to a school where kids were much more independent, and I just switched. And I started, you know, wanting to be part of the cool crowd and wanting to sort of skive school and you know, miss classes and go hang out and buy chips in town when we're supposed to be in chemistry class. Like I was pretty naughty in those years. And but I don't think it was a terribly unhappy childhood, but my parents were miserable.
Yeah.
And so I think for me, that's been the thing that probably has shaped me most, because I never saw a happy relationship, you know. And I remember going to someone's house when I was about 16 and seeing their parents laughing, talking, being friends. And I thought it was the weirdest thing. Like, what's wrong with your parents?
Yeah.
Like, why are they sitting next to each other? Yeah. One should be there and the other one should be there, because it was just nothing I'd seen.
That's very interesting when I think about how your life has turned out, and we'll get to that. But I'm really curious already about, you know, how that impacted some of the decisions that you made in your own marriage. But I'm not going to go to that question now, because I really want to anchor who you are, what the feeling of your life has been, and most importantly, I think another thing I always think about when I speak to successful women, and I do associate you with the successful group. So you kind of came back from the naughty child, I guess, and you made something out of your life, which really has been amazing. When you think about your journey, even as a teenager, right? Maybe even early stages of adulthood, do you remember impactful female figures in your life, maybe outside of your mother?
Not directly. I was never close to sort of aunties. Some of my friends' mothers I looked up to and admired. I was very close to my own mother. But it was really people on media. It was people like Oprah, to be honest. I mean, I started watching Oprah when I was still at university. Yeah. And that was definitely, she definitely influenced, and still does. I mean, I still, you know, follow what she does very closely, and just have, you know, so admired her journey and her self-awareness and how much effort she puts into sort of helping other people, you know, figure out who we are and why we're here and stuff like that. But again, since then, I would say I'm a lot more conscious of the relationships I form with women. Yeah. And men are great. I have a lot of male friends. But I cherish my female friends. I don't have sisters. Yeah. So I cherish them so much, you know, and they play a big, big part of my life.
It makes sense, especially, I guess, if you were raised around boys. You know, that intentionality around forming those relationships can be quite crucial. And how has those relationships impacted your journey? I know you were working as a policymaker, and then you jumped into entrepreneurship. When you think about the circle of people that you had around you, do you think there was some kind of influence around that decision, or was it something that just, you know, you were autonomous about?
You know, I think, and this may not be true for everyone, but a number of us started making significant career changes in our 40s.
Yeah.
You know, it just seemed to be a lot of people were changing careers, or they were leaving employment, trying something new. And I think, you know, you get to a point where you start to value things differently, and I valued freedom and independence, and I wanted to be able to kind of have a little more say over how I spend my time, you know, when I choose to do things, and employment didn't give me that. I worked for almost 20 years before I started my own thing, and even then when I left, I wasn't entirely sure what I wanted to do. I just knew what I didn't want to do. And I realized a number of other people were in the same space. So actually, when I started the business that I now run, I did it with a friend. And because we were sort of in this similar space, and actually my marriage had fallen apart, her marriage had fallen apart, and we're like, okay, now what? You know, so we started Vivo, which is a fashion business.
Yesterday we spoke about temporal landmarks, right? These big occasions that happen that sort of make us pause and really think about what the direction our life is taking. Maybe are we missing out on something? Maybe is it time to make a shift? When you think about the timing of the move from being employed to being an entrepreneur, is there a temporal landmark that you associate with that? Was it the same time that you felt your marriage was not maybe going the direction that you had expected it to go? Is there a significant moment that pushed you to do that? Because that's not an easy decision, you know, and a lot of people kind of sit with it for many years before they actually take the leap of faith. When you decided to make that shift, is there any significant moment that you feel really pushed you to actually take that risk?
So I was employed at the time by the British government, and I had a 10-year contract. They don't offer them anymore, but for whatever reason, that's what I had. And it could not be renewed. So I had to make some decision. So sometimes you're kind of forced, you know what I mean? It's like, okay, because comfort can be safe. You know, and I wasn't exceptionally fulfilled, but I was earning decent money, and, you know, I could have a nice life. But because I had to make a choice, it was like, okay, well, then I might as well really think about this. And then the more I thought about it, the more I realized I didn't want to keep doing what I was doing. And I also realized that I didn't want to keep moving, because my work had involved moving countries every 2 to 3 years. And that's exciting, you know, to some extent, but it's also exhausting. And, you know, you starting over again. And at that, you know, at my last assignment, my kids were, when that was coming to an end, my kids were 3 and 5. And I could already see that they were struggling. You know, what do you mean we're moving? Where are we going? And I just thought, oh my God, am I going to take them through this another 5 times? And because grounding for me is very important, friendship is very important, knowing where you're from is I didn't want them to be these global nomads who didn't really have roots. I think as parents, you know, we want to give our kids roots, we want to give them wings. And I was like, what roots am I giving? And yes, I am a root, their dad is a root. But being part of a community, feeling this is where I'm from, that has always been really important for me. So even though I've traveled, I've lived in different places, I am very aware of the fact that I'm Kenyan. You know? And that's always, you know, I've lived places for 5 years and I still say, oh, you guys, you know, we. I never said I'm originally from Kenya. I said I am Kenyan. And that's how I've identified my entire life. Even though my mother's not Kenyan. So it's because of where I was raised. I think you said this yesterday.
It's very similar to my story as well, because in South Africa, I was raised in a region called KZN, which is KwaZulu-Natal, where there's a high concentration of Zulu people. But in actual fact, my mother is Tsonga and my dad is Swati. So I have no Zulu blood in me. This is probably the first time I'm confessing this. It just becomes a big part of your identity.
Yeah. So I think the combination of, you know, I have to make a choice. I know I don't want to do that kind of work. I know I don't want to keep moving around. I wasn't actually at that point, I hadn't realized the state of where my marriage was at, but I knew I wanted to come home.
Yeah.
And so coming home was the first decision.
Okay.
And then slowly things started unfolding.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. How do you then end up in fashion? Is it something you'd always been interested in? Was there a point in your life where you thought maybe one day I would love to get into this industry? Were you a fashionista? What is it that drew you into fashion?
So the answer is no, no, no. Like never. Had no fashion background. Was never a fashionista. I always enjoyed shopping, but I always enjoyed shopping for bargains. Like I was that, you know, no matter what I wore, you know, especially when I was living in Canada, it would be like, where'd you get that? And how much did it cost? $9.99. Like that was $9. Like I rarely ever bought anything over 10. I mean, now, of course, I've been asked this question a few times and I've looked back and I've discovered, like at one point in my life, I used to cut pictures out of magazines and stick them in a scrapbook. But only because I like the pictures.
Yeah.
Not
about the clothes.
Well, I like the clothes and I like the way the models looked in them, but never because I wanted to design clothes or never because I wanted to be in fashion specifically as a career. So the way we got into it, so it was 2009, I moved back to Kenya, I'm not employed, have a lot of free time, and this friend of mine was in a similar situation, and so we filled up a lot of time doing dance classes and going to yoga and going to Pilates, and the more we did that, we got into it, and then we wanted to, you know, accessorize, like, oh, we want some nice yoga pants, and oh, I'm doing salsa, where do we get salsa shoes? And we realized that there just wasn't enough. There wasn't enough on the market, and what was there was very expensive. And we sort of convinced ourselves that this was not a problem that only we were facing. Like, surely there are other people who, similarly want to do stuff. And so that was the gap, and that was the problem we were going to solve. And so we started a business specifically to provide dance and fitness clothing and accessories. And we were going to do it online, and we assumed that all we needed to do was create a website, put some pictures up, tell a few people, and sales would come. And what we realized very quickly is everyone wanted to touch and feel. They wanted to try it on. And we didn't have a location, so people started coming to my house, and that became a bit weird. And so we decided to open a store.
Yeah. And
because we now had a serious commitment, when you have a website and a few clothes.
That's true.
You can have a bad month. It's not going to destroy you.
Yeah, it doesn't. You don't feel the dent.
Yeah, but suddenly now it was like legal contracts and lawyers and commitments and 6-year leases, and we're like, wow, okay, we have to make sure there's some revenue.
Yeah. So
to make sure there was revenue, we introduced clothing, just regular clothing, because we thought, well, what if half the people who come in aren't interested in yoga, or they don't dance? What are we're not going to have anything for them. And so we introduced this clothing line, and within a few weeks it was obvious that's what people wanted.
That was the cash cow.
Yeah, that's what was selling. And so when you're in business and you have a limited amount of cash and you need to replenish, you replenish what is selling. You're not going to keep buying more dance stuff when it's the tops and the sweaters and the dresses that people like. So we just kept buying more of that and more of that. And slowly it went from being 50-50 to literally 95% clothing, 5% fitness.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
A lot of entrepreneurs use a little bit of instinct and data when making some of these decisions around which direction should the business go. How much for you is the quota when it comes to instinct versus data when it comes to decision making? Because you start this business because this is something that you like and you want to solve a problem for yourself. And you quickly realize that maybe that's not what people want and they want something different. How do you mentally make that adjustment of, now I'm in business, now I need to make data decisions? Because I think a lot of people also get into business because they want to survive, right? Other people get into business because this is what I love, you know, and those people are largely instinct driven when they make decisions about their business. And then there's people who get into business because they want to be profitable and they want to build something big. And most of the time, those are the data people who ultimately say, this is what's going to get me there. When you came in, you didn't have this massive vision of the business that you have now. You were just wanting to get the clothes that you liked.
Yeah.
The mental shift around moving from that to, I'm servicing consumers and this thing is growing and I'm committing to making it grow. How much of that was instinct, data? And then when I mean data, I'm actually also speaking about the lease that you had for 6 years and the impact that it had in those decisions.
So, you know, I think data is different things, right? So data points are coming to you all the time. I mean, anytime a customer walks in and either buys or doesn't buy, and the questions they ask you or the you know, what they say about what they tried on, that's data. You know, so I think you're constantly, you know, going back and forth between what you think and then is the data confirming or telling you that that's not correct. So in the early days, it was very much instinct. It was sort of like, well, this is what I think and this is what I'd like. And you're almost creating for the market of one, which you realize very quickly that that's not who's buying. Yeah. You know, so I think as we've grown, what we tend to do now is we don't do a lot of market research. We take everything we've heard and everything we've learned and everything we're hearing, what we're seeing out there, and then we try to tie that into a small kind of almost test. So whether it's a new product, I mean, the big, when you have to make big investments, the data becomes more important. But I'll be honest, and for us, big investments are a new store. Yes. So every new store is a big check, and we don't always know. Literally, we watch and see who the much bigger players, what they're doing. So, you know, a new mall's coming up and it's like, oh, Carrefour's there, Java's there, Optica's there. You know, they must have lots of money and they must do lots of data. So let's just go where they are. Yes. And that doesn't always work. So I think now we're starting to try and do a lot more groundwork. Like we'll go and spend time in an area, look around, watch, just what are people doing? Where are they eating? What are they wearing? You know, what else is going on here, and how does that fit with what we think we offer? But that's taken a long time to get there. So to answer your question, I think instinct is important, but I use it more now for things to do with, so for example, hiring decisions. Obviously, people have to pass a certain level of competence, and depending on the job, it might be even more so. But then there's still that gut feel around, you know, is this somebody you would want to spend time with? Yeah. Is there somebody you'd walk into the office every day and kind of, you know, look forward to having a conversation with? And those things are hard to sometimes, you know, you can't just do a test to say, is this somebody? What else do I do? Instinct around opportunities. You know, sometimes I just feel, you know, it's like you had this opportunity to come to Kenya, and it's like, I just feel like this could be something, you know, like something's going to come from this. So that, you know, should I go to this event? Should I, you know, I look at somebody and they seem interesting. Should I have this conversation? Yeah. So I think when you know, life is constantly presenting opportunities, and your instinct or your energy will sometimes, you'll feel yourself being drawn and pulled, and other times you feel a bit more resistance, like, nah, I don't know why, but I'm sort of not feeling it. And I think what I try to question for me is that a fear-based feeling, or is it a genuine kind of, nah, something's not right there.
Yeah.
And that's not always that easy to tell. And I think for everybody, you'll learn yourself and you know. But I try not to let fear get in the way.
One of the things that is very interesting for me around people who get into entrepreneurship, often without maybe the background of being around entrepreneurs, having the experience maybe of being taught, how to think through administration, which is a big part of business. I think half of the business that fail is because they don't have that bit and they don't get the administration right. How have you navigated that? Figuring out how to manage your finances is a big part of the reasons businesses fail. Figuring out how to invest in opening more stores. You have 23 now. 22.
About to be 23.
Well, I'm giving you the 23rd one. Clearly, I'm bringing the luck for the 23rd one. How do you navigate figuring out how do you invest in the next store? How much of this money do you take there? How do you make sure that, the one store that you start with is running? What amount does it get to before you go to the next store? Navigating all those decisions is not just about intelligence. You have to have, I guess, some kind of understanding around how money works and how to administratively and efficiently run the business.
Well, one is because I had worked for so long, and the kind of work I did was a lot of big donor programs. They had budgets, we had projects, we had plans. So I think some of those skills are transferable. I mean, the difference was that I had much less room to play with.
Yeah.
Now it's like, ooh, I can decide. Like, I don't have to take it to a boss somewhere who has to sign off everything.
Yeah.
But I get to decide, do I spend 30% on product and 10% on marketing, or 20% on marketing and 30, and the amounts were small, but whether you're conscious of it or not, you are making decisions all the time.
Yep.
Every time you say yes to something, that's a decision. Every time you say no, every time you...
Even when you ignore it.
Even when you ignore it, that's a decision.
That's a decision.
It may not be a conscious one. But, so I think you learn by doing, and I'm a doer. I'm much more of a doer. I jump in and then go, okay, now we're in.
Yeah.
Now what? You know? But I also, within a few years, realized this is bigger. Like the decisions and the things I'm having to think about, I'm not sure what I'm doing now. So I took myself back to school.
Oh, wow.
Not formal, not like, but I did a lot of business programs.
Yes.
So for example, Stanford University runs a program that launched in West Africa and is now in East and Southern Africa, and now is also in Asia, called the Stanford Seed Program, where they bring the Stanford Business School professors to the continent and they run executive programs.
Oh, that's amazing.
It's when I did it, it was over a 6-month period, but you meet 4 times for 1 week at a time. That shifted everything. For the first time, I had, first of all, the space away from the day-to-day, where you're sitting there and you're thinking about your business and you're doing it in a classroom environment with professors, you're doing case studies, and then you're learning the tools and you're applying them to your business. So, okay, we're going to learn about marketing. Here's how you think about marketing. Here's how you break it down. Here's how you think about where your product is positioned and what price point and how you what's the distribution, and then map out your business against this template.
Yeah.
And I was like, whoa, okay, clearly we haven't thought through that and whatever. And you do this, and by the end of it, you put together what they call a transformation plan, which is like a 5-6 year strategy. I did the Vivo one in 2016, and it was to cover 2017 to 2023. And we had to articulate what they considered very ambitious goals. And so at the time we were
I love that.
6 stores, 60 staff. We were doing revenues of just about $1 million a year. And I said, by 2023, we're going to have 30 stores. We're going to have at least $10 million in revenue. We're going to have over 250 staff. And everything we said then, the way in which we've gotten there is maybe slightly different. We've taken detours. We had a pandemic, all this stuff. But actually, we will hit those targets this year.
That is amazing. That's giving me goosebumps. I'm so excited. I feel like I'm part of the business. Literally, that's giving me goosebumps. That is absolutely amazing.
But, and it may not. I mean, I'm saying this in January, and who knows?
It's still 22 and a half.
We have a couple of, 11 and a half months to go. But I think writing things down, whether it's in our personal lives, whether it's in our business lives, it gives you something to work towards.
Yeah.
And it gives clarity around the goal.
Yeah.
And, you know, then you can say, is this helping us get there, or is it a distraction?
Is it not?
You know, in personal lives, you write down. I mean, friends of mine have said this to me for years, and I've been single for a while, and they're like, write down
The description. I literally could think about it before you even said it.
Who you would, you know, what would be
the ideal
person.
Yeah.
And be as specific as possible.
Yes.
Viola Davis talks about
Absolutely.
this in her documentary.
Absolutely.
With Oprah, and you know, yeah, I think there's power.
I absolutely believe writing things down is transformational. Because it gives you direction, like you mentioned, but it also keeps you accountable for what you said your dreams are. And I think I shared this with you, that even coming into this year, I had to sit down and reflect on last year. And I said to a friend of mine, it's very interesting, when you're chit-chatting and you're on the phone with your girlfriends, you can talk about a lot of things, but once you sit and you sit still,
Yeah.
you become intentional, you think through everything, you start to really see the picture of what your life looks like. So absolutely, I believe that writing things down, intentionality around your life is transformational. When you think about your journey, what has been the biggest challenge in getting to store 22?
Oof. You know, there hasn't been one. You know, the truth is that it's multiple little challenges all the time. And so the biggest challenge is keeping aware of them and finding ways to juggle. So you can't really let any significant thing drop too much.
Yeah.
So if your challenge is hiring talented people, you know, that can be a really big challenge. But you know, if you only focus on that and you're not thinking about your customer, and you're not thinking about your product, and you're not thinking about, you know, the quality of your experience, or you're not thinking about where you're going to get the funds in order to do all. So it's, you know, it's all these things. And so for me, having, you know, after I did that program, there were a couple of things. One is I created a board, and I brought people on the board who would have skills in areas where I don't have experience, and people who would challenge me and support me, and be on the end of a phone call when I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing here. Like, how do I? And that's how, because again, imagining that, and that's how you start a business. At the beginning, it's you.
Yeah.
You are you're the only person who's
your HR, your IT, your finance.
You're having to solve every problem on your own, and that's great because it keeps you quick, and it means that you get to know every aspect.
Yes.
But as you scale, you can't. And it actually would be a disaster if you tried to, because you're going to have to hire other people, and you're going to have to learn to trust them and let go and not interfere and not get too, you know, caught up in, is it exactly the way you would have done it?
Absolutely.
And
absolutely
so that's
agree.
been a journey.
Yeah.
So if anything, my challenge probably has been a challenge of leadership and learning how to become a leader as opposed to just an entrepreneur who's driving.
Yeah.
You know.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
That's powerful. I think a lot of people will probably resonate with that who are building businesses, especially when you have to start getting other people in. That's really, really challenging, because do you know your vision enough to be able to share it? Do you know your vision enough to be able to make it into a culture, right? Because you need to create culture when you have stuff through the continents. Because I know that you guys are in Kenya, you're in Rwanda, and also in Ghana now.
No, not yet, but we are planning.
You're planning.
We're starting with East Africa, so we will expand more in East Africa. So hopefully by the end of this year, we'll be in at least 2 or 3 other East African countries.
I feel like
you know,
will be.
When the Africa free trade thing becomes a reality, then that just opens up a chance for us not just to take our product elsewhere, but to bring other brands here through the second business we have, which is an e-commerce marketplace. And at the moment we have almost 200 brands on it, but it's mostly Kenyan. You know, so we want to see this cross-fertilization and to make the Africa story really an Africa story.
Any doubts along the way as you were building? Doubts?
Doubt all the time. Are you kidding me? Like daily.
But how do you,
doubts
so
in
what
the sense-
makes you wake up when you feel like maybe this is not
it's bigger
working?
because it's bigger than you. You know, it gets to the point, and you know, I fall in love with the business like it's new all the time. Like in the beginning, it's exciting because it was just, hey, you know, having a product, that's exciting, creating that. I mean, now I have 300 staff in one business, 50 in another, and it's not about me.
Yeah.
And we have a chance to prove something, to help lift an industry, to show, you know, to be an inspiration to other younger entrepreneurs who are getting started in this space. And you know, when we started Vivo, no one believed, there was no local fashion brand that was ready to wear easily accessible at an affordable price.
Yeah.
In Kenya, it didn't exist, and we had so many skeptics. You know, a lot of people who meant well. I think a lot of people, really, friends especially, they don't want to see you fail. They don't want to see you suffer. So they're like, are you sure? You know, Kenyans prefer imported, or, you know, tailors are very hard to deal with. You know, you're going to have you're going to spend all your time hiring and firing. And that was their experience, or that was their belief, and that's valid from their perspective. But I'm like, well, who says you can't do it differently?
Yeah.
Who says? You know, like I believe that everything seems impossible until you do it.
Yeah.
You know,
literally, that's Nelson Mandela's quote, right?
Yeah,
it
but
always
also
seems
when
impossible
Obama,
until it's
when
done.
Obama was running, I remember having this conversation with so many people saying, America's not ready. America's not ready for black president. I'm like, how are you going to know when they're ready?
Yeah.
Is there going to be a sign?
Yes,
like, okay,
we
guys,
are ready.
Announcement, we're not ready, come. You know, how did we know when had we put product in front of Kenyans that they refused to buy and done that for 10 years? I'm like, no, let's try it. And now there's hundreds of brands.
Yeah.
And, you know, I don't want to say that, you know, we were the only ones to do it first, but I think we definitely showed and continue to show that it's possible.
What have the misconceptions been around being an entrepreneur that you've discovered on your journey, particularly when you think about the number of people that leave their jobs? Your contract was coming to an end. There are people who voluntarily leave their jobs with the assumption that they're going to have all this time to do anything that they want when they're entrepreneurs. You know, entrepreneurship is always associated with this idea of freedom, and freedom is always associated with this idea of having your own time and owning it. But I find that for me, I've been an entrepreneur now for over 12 years. And yes, there is that feeling of, I think, autonomy around decision making.
Exactly.
But there isn't quite a lot of time that you have to do nothing.
So I work harder than I've ever worked.
Yeah.
So I think there's, you know, pros and cons to, and entrepreneurship is not for everybody.
Absolutely.
You know, so the pressure, because now the buck stops with you. And especially when you hire people and you make commitments and you have, you know, liabilities and stuff like that, you know, now you can't just resign.
Yeah.
You know, if you have a job, you can one day get up and say,
I don't want to do this anymore. Yeah.
Here's my notice. See you. So that's a different kind of freedom.
Yes.
There is no way at this stage I mean, when you're just starting a business, maybe you can just shut it down, you know, within a day's decision. Now we have 25 leases, you know, we've got contracts with all these staff. I mean, even if I wanted to, which I don't.
Yeah.
So the freedom is really the freedom to create, the freedom to decide, the freedom to choose where you're going to put your energy. Will you have to put your energy? Yes. Probably 5 times more. And it never leaves you. Like you're never fully away.
Yeah.
Because it's personal, you know. So I can't switch off. I can go away, I can take a break, but I'm still, you know, I know that should anything happen,
they need to reach you.
I will be the first person that will receive a phone call saying, we have a problem.
Yeah.
You know, and, you know, at this stage, it needs to be a very big problem for them to call me on a holiday, but they will still call me.
Yeah.
But I kind of like that. I mean, and again, that's, you need to know who you are. I like driving things. I like changing my mind if
something's not working.
Yes, and sometimes that's annoying for the people who work with me, because I'll be all excited about something, and then, you know, I'll go to sleep, wake up and say, you know what? Nah, you know, let's not do that.
Yeah.
And they're like, what? We just put in 3 weeks. So I'm that annoying boss.
Yeah.
You know? I try not to do it too much now because I realize how disruptive it is for them. And for me, it's one of 20 or 30 different things I'm thinking about. For them, it might be the one
only thing
that they've worked on for the last 3 weeks. So that sensitivity around, you may be the entrepreneur, but for them it's employment. For them it's a job. For them it's security. For them it's, you know, so touch wood, in 12 years of business, we have never paid a salary late.
Wow.
Even if it's meant I don't take a salary. Even if it's meant we pay rent late. Like in my mind, I'm very clear, there's this hierarchy and my team comes first. And then government, only because they'll fine me. Or,
yes.
I'll be slapped with like
yes.
serious penalties. And then it's the smaller suppliers and contractors. And, you know, and so if money is tight, because sometimes it is, it's like, okay, here's where you know, here's where it goes first. So I'm very, very conscious of the commitments and the promises we have made to each other, to the people in the team, to our customers. And that those are the things that keep me up at night, and that's also what would make it very difficult to walk away.
It seems like an enormous responsibility to carry with you so many families, because every single person is a family, right? It's not just that individual that's working at the shop. It's everyone that is dependent on them and the people that they support. Where does Wandia go for rest, for wellness, for her cup to be filled?
Home,
you know?
my home. I've created a home that I enjoy coming back to, a home that my friends feel comfortable, my kids enjoy, you know. So even if I just stay home on a weekend, I feel like I'm away.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense.
It does, absolutely.
I've taken time to think about my room, you know. Do I like my room? Do I walk into my room and just be like, oh, it's so nice to get into bed? So there's that. There's people. People are my friends.
Yeah.
My neighbor. I mean, she's, you know, we have a ritual. I go to sit with her every Sunday morning.
That's beautiful.
We share a same compound, but the morning sun is on her balcony and the evening sun is on mine.
That's beautiful.
So I like the sun in the morning, so I go and we sit in her garden, and the sun comes in, and I drink the coffee that only her people know how to make. You know, it's that sort of thing.
That's beautiful.
But I want to go back to the thing around responsibility, and, you know, I can never guarantee anything. None of us can, you know. Who knew there was going to be a pandemic? Who knew that, you know, businesses would suffer so much? So one of the things that I've recently started to do, and I'm hoping to do more and more, is think about, because we're now an ecosystem within the group of over 350 people. Everyone has skills that they use outside of work. Maybe it's the same skill they use in work, but every Kenyan, I don't know if it's like this in South Africa, every Kenyan has at least 1 or 2, maybe even 3 side hustles. And so what I'm saying is, how can we as an ecosystem support that?
Yeah.
Because you're not necessarily going to be here for long. You know, maybe 3, 4, younger people even less. You know, they'll come and they'll be like, yeah, I've learned everything I need to learn in 2 years, and they're off to the next thing. So I'm like, how can we see this ecosystem as a way to support each other's side hustles?
Yeah.
So yes, you come to work and you're an accountant, but you keep chickens at home and you sell eggs. Can we know? So, because everyone here buys eggs, so why don't we buy your eggs?
Yes.
And, you know, or you're here and you're a tailor. You're one of the people who stitches, but maybe people need custom outfits for their daughter's gurario, which is like a traditional wedding. Don't go to some other tailor, hire this guy.
Yes. You
know, so that everyone's growing. I mean, everybody we all want the same things. You know, it doesn't matter what stage of life you're at. It doesn't matter what background you're from. You want security. You want your children to go to a good school. You want to live in a nice house. You know, you want to see a future that you don't have to be stressed constantly.
Yeah.
Where am I getting this? And as a company, we can't triple everybody's salary every other. It has to be sustainable. So how else can we sort of create wealth, help people create wealth?
You seem to have an abundance mindset, you know, and what I mean by abundance mindset, it's this ability to be in a space with people and have this belief that there is enough in the world for everyone. And I find that people who are like that have a security in themselves that maybe people who are not like that don't have. You know, I always talk about the struggle with collaborating, the struggle sometimes with empowerment is insecurity, right? How do I empower you if I don't feel like I have enough? There's no way I'm gonna start thinking about how do I give to you? How do I grow you? How do I multiply your opportunity? Where do you think that comes from for you? You know, that feeling of, if you're selling eggs and you work for me, I want to buy them from you, and not the feeling of, why are you selling eggs when you should be working for me? Because there are people who have that mindset, and I don't know if it could be a cultural thing or it is a personality thing, but it feels to me every time I speak to you that you have that deep inclination for everyone to win.
Well, first of all, I will still want you to work, so sell your eggs, you know, but sell them at lunchtime or sell them after work. So it's not as though,
of course,
whatever. So, but I think it's purely because I've seen it happen and I've seen it work, and I've been the recipient of it so many times, where there are people who, you know, you sit with them, maybe you don't even know them that well, and they listen to a bit of your story and they're like, how can I help? Yeah. You know, is there anything that you think I can, you know, are you interested in, this is what I know, this is where I come from, these are my networks. Is there any in that can help you? And just that spirit of generosity, and I've received so much generosity from others that I just, you know, it would be crazy not to want to do that, to give back as much as I've received. That's one thing. Secondly, I genuinely think that it is not in our interests to imagine that we must all do our individual things alone. You know, I just don't see how that's going to work. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't even make business sense. Yeah. We cannot all create our
silos.
Yeah. If you're here now, you've come to Kenya. You've hired a team of amazing, you know, people who've helped set up this interview. You don't have to fly your people. Yes. Like it's my people only. Yes. Like trust that. You know, and so even within the fashion space, and this is a conversation I have because I'm very passionate about Kenyan, made in Kenya, local fashion, because that's how we're going to create jobs. But it's tiny. And so everyone sort of a bit feels like we're competing against each other. And I keep saying, guys, man, we don't even make up 5% of the market. Yeah. 95% of everything Kenyans are wearing was not made in Kenya. So why are we worried? You know, let's see how we can compete to attract the people who are not buying Kenyan. Yeah. And make them buy Kenyan. So if me helping you gets a better product, and that product encourages somebody who's never bought something local to buy, they're more likely to try another local brand. That's true. You see what I'm saying?
That's very true. It's an ecosystem.
It's an ecosystem. So you can't think about it just from like it's all about what I need to hold to myself. Yeah. Because you'll stay small. You know. So yeah, I don't know. And that doesn't mean that I'm not also paranoid about. I'm more paranoid about, not so much about other people. You know, what other people are doing or other brands or other businesses. I'm paranoid about us not doing better. Yeah. Do you know? Yeah. I never stay happy about yesterday's results for very long. You know, I'll be like, okay, oh wow, we had a good day yesterday, great. So how are we going to make sure today? You know, better. It's like this constant need to stay on your toes and you know, I think you and I shared, I listened to The Diary of a CEO.
Yes.
And one of his episodes, I can't remember which one, but it was a guy who trained Kobe Bryant and Michael Jordan. And they talked a lot about this concept of marginal gains.
Yeah.
It's these small, tiny improvements.
Yep.
But they're opportunities to improve every single day.
Absolutely.
You know, and you do it by recognizing, you know, thinking, what did we do today? How did that go? What could have been a little bit better? You know, asking the person or the customer, you know, how was that experience? What worked? What didn't work? Okay, what can we tweak? What? And for me, it's this constant, like, little, and I watched you preparing for this thing. It's like you spent, you know, you were like, should this cushion be there or there or there?
Yeah.
And like, I'm learning.
Yeah.
Like I was learning from that. I'm like, wow, this is real, man. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, I'm very particular about those things. But absolutely, I think one of the most empowering lessons any entrepreneur can learn is the idea of marginal gains, because it frees you from this idea that everything needs to be perfect. And once you're freed from the idea that everything needs to be perfect, you are able to empower other people even with their faults. Because I think perfection can be such a prison for growth.
There's no such thing.
There's no such thing. The idea of it, the pursuit of it ends up being a prison, because how do you then onboard people into your business who are going to make mistakes, who don't live in your head, who don't know the vision yet on their first day or second day or first month or third month? I think for me, one of the most empowering experiences as an entrepreneur has been the idea that it won't be perfect today. We'll make mistakes. I will get people who don't see what I see in my head. I will teach. I will learn with them. There's something that they'll teach me as well, and we'll all grow together. And I don't think there's a better way to end our conversation than really this idea of marginal gains. And if there's anything that I think people who are listening can take away, even you know, the way that you went from the one shop to the learning with Stanford and recognizing, oh, I didn't know that. Because even this vision that we often have, we don't know how big or small it is until you are in a room with people with bigger visions, right? So I'm so honored to have shared this moment with you. I was telling you off camera that I feel like there's so much that I would want to dive into around, you know, your character and how it's been built, the people that have been around you. There's so many other stories. You know, I think we need to do a part 2. We have to do a part 2. I think I already know how I'm going to do it, and I'm excited thinking about it. But thank you so much for your time, and congratulations on all the growth. I'm excited to see where the next
and the same for you. I mean, you know, like we said yesterday, it's been 7 years. So much has changed.
So much has changed.
Loving what you're doing. Loving that you're bringing it outside of South Africa to Kenya, hopefully to many other parts of the continent.
Yeah.
And I hope we can keep interacting and helping each other along those journeys.
Absolutely. This is definitely not the last time that we're speaking.
Thank you. And keep coming to Kenya.
I love it.
This is the first of very many.
I absolutely love it. I definitely will be coming back.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Namden. Thanks.